Namaste. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Thursday night Anamkara meditation program. With all my heart, with all my love, I'm absolutely delighted you're joining us this evening. And so we can explore, some of the teachings, the practices that take us beyond the mind. Because that's really what we're aimed at through all the different practices from all the different traditions, is to go beyond the confines of the limited mind, the conditioned mind, that drives our automatic reactivity, behaviors, attitudes, everything like that. So to clear that all out of the way, we do the practices that come out of a context that really has been realized over and over and over again, that the living presence of the infinite, the divine, however we might want to call that, is always present, always here, always now, pervading everything about us and the universe. So when we look at why don't we know that, that's why we focus on the mind. It's the nature of the mind and our identification with it. It's really the identification with the limited mind that so obscures the infinitude of being, the divine that is all that there is. So we do the practices with the intention of knowing what's already present, and to go beyond the suffering that the mind creates for itself. And we do that with these practices that we also dedicate for the relief of suffering of all beings. Because part of what the practices are, they're aimed at helping us to know the selflessness of being. The little self, I'm just this person sitting here, is different from that person sitting somewhere else. That gets us bound up in, there's others, there's me, there's what I want and what I need, there's what they want and what they need. So to cut through all of that, we do practices that have as a part of them the practice of an attitude of selflessness, selfless service. Well, that's karma yoga. The selfless dedication of our practices that for the relief of suffering for all beings is cultivating that perspective that, we want everyone to be free. It's not just a selfish act. And we also want to get to the state where we see there is no other. We are all united. So what I'm doing for others, I'm really doing for my own self. To love others is loving myself, but not in the ordinary mind's sense of that. So we have to go beyond the mind. We have to be directly informed by the living experience of that. Not just teachings, not just theology, not just religious practice, not all those things. The direct experience. So the hallmark of, the yogic practices, the Buddhist practices, the mystic practices across traditions is really aimed at be a direct knower. You have this capacity. It's one of the extraordinary gifts of a human birth, is to have a form that can know the infinite as its own self and as all there is. Make use of this precious human birth to know that. And so we do the practices. We dedicate the merit, the power of them to the relief of suffering of all beings. And we engage in the practices with that intent to know that, so that we become fully realized, fully empowered to help relieve the suffering of others. So that's our commitment. That's where we start out. And that's what informs then our everyday practices and our practices here this evening in this gathering of satsang. Satsang, as you know, sat means the truth, that which is the same at all times in all places, the essence of everything. Sangha, to keep the company of fellow seekers who are also endeavoring to know that and share that experience with others and share with one another what it takes to go through that process and continue on that and to support one another. So these are great gifts that you bring to this evening by wherever you might be, because in the unified field of consciousness, we're one, we're together. The mind sees, somebody's in, Asia, somebody's in down south, somebody's in California, whatever it might be. But in the field of consciousness, that's where that unity is. And we're sharing the power of our practices, the power of our commitment, the realizations we've come to, the open-heartedness that develops through these practices. So thank you for being ones doing that and coming this evening and sharing the fullness of that with everybody here. And we'll have a chance at the end of the program to open up the mics and video, so anybody who wanted to ask questions, share, just get together at the end, we're welcome to do that. But this evening, what I wanted to do is actually follow up on some topics that came up 2 weeks ago in our last satsang. And one of them had to do with, we were talking about joy in the world, you know, and how to both experience the pleasures of the world and not get caught in them. Somebody was talking about how very, very often, you know, spiritual traditions kind of eschew pleasures of the world. And in fact, you know, renunciation, well, that's a foundational practice in many traditions. Of course, there's gradations of renunciation, and there's what underlies renunciation. There's an ancient Vedic tradition, it's an old saying that says, peace follows renunciation. And as we had talked about a few weeks ago in the Bhagavad Gita, where the great yogi, the Lord Krishna, the incarnation of the highest, is teaching about how if you forget your true nature, and then the mind wanders about through the senses looking for wholeness, it grasps this pleasure out of this sense and another one out of another, and it's wandering around through all these ephemeral realms, our everyday realm, getting lost in that, and always dissatisfied because no pleasure there is ever going to last. It's the ephemeral domain of the mind. So when the yogis were saying, well, peace follows renunciation, it has to do with renouncing that seeking of fullness, the seeking of pleasure that's going to fill one, seeking it through the mind, through the senses, through material existence. But the whole saying is peace follows renunciation. Renunciation follows discrimination. Discrimination. Viveka, discernment. So in the yogic traditions, viveka, discrimination, has to do with that capacity that we have and cultivate and develop, is that ability to see the difference between the real and the unreal, meaning the ephemeral and the eternal, the limited self, the limited I awareness, and the universal consciousness of being, whether we call it Buddha nature, Christ consciousness, the Para-Atman, many different names for it, but it's not the little self of the ordinary existence day by day that's conditioned, always conditioned. It's conditioned by what am I identified with, what gender, what roles, what's the shape of my body, what have I been through in training, am I a professional, am I a welder, what am I? That's what the mind's always, what am I, who am I, what do I do? And it comes up with all these answers that have to do with these very limited, contracted notions of who we are. So when we're developing viveka, and viveka springs naturally from the states that go beyond the mind. So in meditation, we start to have the spontaneous experience of what we are beyond the confines of the mind. That there's a universal quality of awareness, of consciousness, that illuminates the experience of the mind. It illuminates the mind becoming identified with a particular role and then defending that, or being, sensitive about criticism or whatever might be going, or seeking, I want acknowledgement for that. These are all common everyday ways that the ordinary mind functions. But the yogi, the individual trying to get free of that whole paradigm, is looking beyond that. And it's another reason why we especially have to keep the company of other seekers, because the world does not seek that. The world seeks, how do I augment myself by accolades, degrees, various things that are going to build my self-esteem, build my identity in ephemeral ways. But to the ordinary world, that's all there is. Right? So it was really the mystics of all traditions that come back with the message from their hero's journey of having gone, transcended that limited awareness, that limited I consciousness, and then came back with the wisdom and the profound teachings that we then see in mystic traditions. From Buddhism to Taoism to yoga to Shaivism to Christian mystics, Sufi mystics, Jewish mystics, all about this unity in the divine, which means leaving behind the ordinary mind. It also transforms our experience of the pleasures of everyday life. It doesn't mean that we become turned off to them. It just means that when we have the experience of that fullness of the infinitude of being, what is really genuinely, truly rapturous, ecstatic, loving consciousness, fullness beyond speaking, beyond words, beyond conceptualization of any form. Knowing that, yes, then the fleeting pleasures of the world look much smaller. They don't disappear. You don't have to have an attitude about them, right? An attitude about them sometimes is practice to begin with, because one doesn't have that experience. If one doesn't have viveka, then turning the mind away and saying, mind, you're not going to find it there. It's a practice, because it's not arising spontaneously from seeing that, oh, I am full beyond measure, and a passing pleasure of something in my visual field, something in my mouth, something in my touch, something in a scent. I can just regard them as just passing phenomenon that are nice. But I'm not looking to them to fill me, right? To make me whole, to seek that from another person. That person's going to make me whole. This job is going to make me whole. This degree is going to make me whole. This accolade is going to make me whole. This fame is going to make me whole. All the different things that the world, naturally, we see, does, mystics are saying, no, that doesn't work. That's a very short-term practice for knowing fullness, because that fullness, isn't full, and it's fleeting. So renunciation is born at least of that awareness like that, and how to turn the mind away and say, wait, I want to know the real source. When we start to know the real source, then renunciation isn't about repression or suppression, right? So repression and suppression are dynamics that the mind uses to try to come into alignment with that notion, that concept that, oh, the world is not going to provide you with that fullness of being. So we do this practice of, I'm going to turn away from that. But we don't have the fullness. We don't have the fullness that's arising from the source that we've come into touch with. And that now illuminates us moment by moment. So we're depending on that sort of suppression, repression to turn away. And that's okay. That helps to train the mind and remind it, that's not going to be the source. Turn within. Turn within. This is the teaching of every mystic tradition. Turn within. It means turn to the source. Go beyond the ordinary mind. Go beyond the ordinary pleasures of the world to know, oh, what's at the root of all that? And so even in sort of tantra practices, where one might say, oh, there's a delicious taste, and you use it as a practice. You could take your favorite food. It might be a very fine dark chocolate. That's one of my favorites. Then when the joy arises from that taste, you let go of the object and the sense and go, oh, where is that arising from? Because it didn't come from the chocolate. It arose inside. So let me follow it back to source. If we're sitting outside and feel the expansiveness of the night sky And it's inviting our mind to expand and transcend the ordinary confines of just being a little person wherever we are. That expansiveness, oh, well, we're becoming aware of it through that sort of sense of the galaxies, the stars, the night sky, the magnificence of that. The experience is arising within. How do we then shift and go, awareness? Awareness itself is the spaciousness that holds all of creation, illuminates all of creation. Every star, every planet, every galaxy, every thought, every pulse of your heart, every breath coming and going, every movement in the body. It's all arising and subsiding in the infinite space of awareness itself. Awareness that is self-luminous, so it illuminates whatever that ephemeral content is that's moving through the space of awareness. Now we can see that's what's being illuminated, the content. Oh, we can shift what's illuminating it. What's the truth of who we are? The luminous one that is all that is, that has become all it is, and knows that. Because not only is it luminous, it's conscious. And in that consciousness is its infinite rapture, its infinite joy, its boundless love for seeing all that is as its own being, its own self. So we come home to that. So that's how we're leaving behind the confines of the ordinary mind to come to know what's the infinitude of being. Always here and now. There's never a time when that presence isn't fully here. Where is our attention? Oh, our attention is usually with the mind. And it's conditioned thought patterns, it's conditioned ways of identifying with this body, this action, an interaction we just had. Somebody said something happened here, or I saw something on the news. All content, all the mind, all the stuff that's being generated, often with suffering attached to it, fleeting joys attached to it. But it's all within the confines of a limited mind, the conditioned mind. So our practices are aimed at knowing the source of all and the source of our consciousness itself and the true nature of that consciousness. Because it's really identification with the mind that limits us. The fullness of awareness is there. The fullness of the experience, the awareness, sat. That's what when we talk about Satchit Ananda as a yogic term for trying to describe what's beyond description. The Buddha used the Four Noble Truths to try and describe what's beyond description. But Sat, that which is the same at all times, in all places, that which is true, eternally true. Well, we step away from that every time we identify with something ephemeral. We identify with our mind, we identify with our body, we identify with a feeling, we identify with a reaction, we identify with a role, we identify with a relationship. We become a son, a daughter, a mother, a father, a husband, a wife, a spouse, an actor in the world. These are the very nature of the mind to move among those things and identify with them. Have the experience of what that identification is. Have the reactions that go with that. But they're all binding, they're all limiting, they're all contracting. So that's why the mystic traditions and our yogic Buddhist mystic practices are all aimed at saying, wait a minute, you're the infinite. All that's finite is held within the boundlessness of being. And you can know both. So that's where the mystic traditions also talk about sort of the evolution of consciousness across lifetimes. That we've been exploring what it is to be a limited, confined, defined, caught, conditioned being for lifetimes. Exploring what it is to be everything, and from the Eastern traditions especially, everything from a one-celled amoeba on up to a human being, or even into transcendent realms and transcendent beings, all of which are bound because they're all caught up in being, a one being, a limited being, no matter what that is. To go beyond being and non-being, to go into the infinitude that has no boundaries. Being already sort of conjures the notion of a boundary. The infinitude, no boundary, no limitations. It has the power to create limitations. So we see this very beautifully described in ancient Kashmir Shaivite tradition, where they'll talk about the power. Well, that's Shakti. Shakti means power. The power of consciousness to become all that is, to create all that it is, to sustain all that is, to dissolve what all it is, to conceal its infinite nature, and to reveal it. So our not knowing, well, that came about by the power of the infinite. To explore, what is it to not know? If the infinite could only know, it would be bound to knowing. It's not. But the condition for unknowing, that's what created us as individuals, and the appearance of separation. It was created by the infinite to explore, to know, to give consciousness that capacity to evolve, to be, once again, come back to being a knower. Because that's the ultimate goal of evolution, of our consciousness across lifetimes, of what a human birth affords us the opportunity to know. So as we're exploring that, there's the infinite taking on all these different limitations, and then, at some point it's tired of it. We're tired of it. We get world weary. How many times do you just feel like, I'm so sick of this world? And not just because of what's going on here and now, which is ghastly, but even when things are good, we can get world weary. Because there's a part of us that intuits there's more than just what it is to be finite, to be limited. Even if the limitation is a nice limitation, even if we're comfortable in our lives, there's a divine discontent. A divine discontent. I mean, it's a discontent that says, no, don't get comfortable in these limitations. There's more. There's so much more to who you are that you haven't come to know. Know that. So that innate capacity to know is also drawing us to know, drawing us to go beyond the mind, drawing us to seek, transcendence of the ordinary mind, to seek expansion beyond the ordinary mind. And sometimes that's done without discrimination. People will get involved in all kinds of things that give them a sense of transcendence, but it's not pure transcendence. It's colored. It's colored by drugs, alcohol, being consumed by another person, being consumed by a group, and our boundaries get loose and we feel expanded, but it's not a healthy expansion at all. So there's many ways that, again, the human psyche explores these things to find what's the true way. What's the way that leads us to the real source? That's the practices. That's what then we see validated over and over by the ways that humans have repeatedly done practices very similar across traditions through meditation, contemplation, study, transforming the mind, training the mind, deconditioning the mind, so that we can become true knowers, that we can imbibe that, inhabit that, and then come to know what's beyond the mind. That's naturally and effortlessly present, because that consciousness, we don't manufacture that. That's not born of mind's effort. That's not born of self-effort. Self-effort can train the mind so that it can act transparent to that. But to come to know that, we dissolve. We dissolve into the infinitude of being. And so we start to see from that perspective, and we see it in all the teachings before we perhaps have had the direct experience, that all of the mind's states are ephemeral. So we're not going to turn the mind into that. It's going to become transparent to that. We're going to let go of identification with the mind so that the true nature of consciousness itself, radiant awareness, boundless infinitude of radiant awareness. All sort of words trying to point beyond themselves desperately. So that it, again, isn't something the mind tries to posture as, tries to hold on to. Says, "Oh, tell me more about it. I'll figure out how to act that way." Because that's another thing that the mind is very accomplished at. And the yogis knew this. They know all the mind's tricks. So they said, the mind is the power of self-appropriation. It tries to appropriate to itself things that are not it, including consciousness. The mind is just content. There's no consciousness. The only consciousness is from source. The mind says, "What do you mean? I'm conscious." But it's not. When it says it's conscious, it can list content. What was illuminating the content that isn't words? What's illuminating the experience of the waking state at all times? Luminous awareness. What illuminates the dream state? Oh, that continued presence of luminous, self-luminous awareness. Even as the ordinary mind begins to fade and its limited awareness borrowed from the light of the infinite fades, awareness itself remains. That's why we can go into deep sleep states even, aware, awake and aware, while the mind is profoundly asleep. So consciousness, awareness, radiant awareness illuminates all the ordinary states, waking, dream, and deep sleep. And the continuous light of awareness, that is the state of infinite being, infinite awareness, right? That's the state of living samadhi, sahaja samadhi. It's not conditioned by a state of mind. It's irrelevant what the state of mind is. Your fully meditative consciousness is fully present here and now, all times. What varies is how we can access it, because what varies is how identified am I with the mind? Who have I become in this moment? If I'm convinced I don't know, then I live in not knowing. If I start to open to the possibility of knowing and quiet the mind and start to see more and more what illumines everything about the mind and all its thoughts and all its structures, then we're deconstructing the mind so that we can see it as it's not the truth of who I am. Truth of who I am is beyond words, beyond definition, beyond everything. That's why Buddha said, "Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhi, swaha." Gone beyond, completely beyond. Hail the goer, you, right? Attaining that highest state, to be a bodhisattva, right? That's our path, right? And so it's that luminous quality that illuminates. The Heart Sutra, it starts out with, there's Buddha absorbed in prajnaparamita, the sublime, transcendent knowing, that then sees all that is as these 5 heaps, what we call the 5 skandhas. Just a way of talking about how we could say, there's mind, there's objects, there's this. There's just 5 skandhas, 5 piles that you could separate all experience into and say, those are just patterns. That's just content. None of it is eternal. None of it is lasting. None of it defines the radiance that's beyond it all, that illuminates these transient forms arising and subsiding, coming about from countless factors that go into everyday existence, that give rise to this body, to give rise to this situation, that give rise to the dynamics in the world. Countless dynamics go into creating that. But awareness, the infinite radiance, is freely watching from that place of absolute, blissful, ecstatic fullness of being. What is it watching? Its own self. Arising and subsiding, dissolving, creating, sustaining, concealing, all the powers of consciousness itself at play is what this universe is. That is a radically different state than the ordinary mind. And that's why when the mind tries to grasp and tries to posture an expanded state, it fails. It fails. And it's an unnecessary effort. Let go. Profoundly let go. Empty. Empty of the mind. Empty of identification with content. Then what's already there is fully known, fully illuminated, because it's illuminated by itself, not the mind. The mind trying to grasp that state, trying to illuminate that state, it's like holding a candle up to the sun and thinking you're going to illuminate the sun. It doesn't happen. So we have to shift out of that. That's why all the practices have to do with how do we shift, how do we let go of limited identification. Part of it is we start to cultivate, oh, I am that. Hamsa. Mantra is a throb of that awareness that can give us the direct experience. So we become absorbed in that. Or Om Namah Shivaya, Maha Mantra. It means a bow to the auspicious one. But that's the least important thing about it, the meaning of it. It's a throb of the awareness of I am the infinite. I am the auspicious one. That's becoming absorbed in that. When we repeat the mantra, we repeat it with the awareness. I am that. I am the mantra. I'm the source of the mantra. I'm the throb of the mantra. I'm the creation of mantra. That's all there is mantra. We're letting go of everything else that appears to be different and separate. So on one level, we're practicing with the mind, but it's cultivating the mind so it's at least oriented in the right direction to catch the self-luminous experience itself, to leave behind the mind and become absorbed in that. That's what we do. So all these practices are aimed at making that shift out of limited identification into what's born of viveka, discrimination, knowing. I am that. Aham, I am. Hamsa, I am that. We see this over and over again across mystical traditions. That realization of I am the infinite. And those are words. That's just an attempt to convey that. That doesn't convey anything but a concept. To know that is to go dumb, to go speechless, because it's unspeakable. That experience is unnameable. So we enter that mystery. That's why it's so often depicted as black. Oh, that's symbolic of mystery. Oh, Ma Kali, the great mother. Black mystery. The bindu at the center of the Mahakali yantra, the black dot, that's the portal. Enter the portal means leave behind all knowing. Everything you think you know about yourself and the world, leave it. Empty. Kenosis. Emptying out. Become empty, and the divine will fill you forever. That's this process. That's viveka. Discrimination. Saying, oh, I get to see that I am not the mind, so I don't have to identify. I don't have to extinguish it. I don't have to beat it up. I don't have to do anything. It's not me. So do I want it to train? Yes, I want it to serve well. I want it to serve what I know to be the all-embracing love and compassion, the wisdom, the peace that is my very nature. So I need a vehicle that is at service of that. So if my mind is caught up in lots of conditioned reactivity, it's not in service of the one. It's in service of its ignorance and its delusions. So we differentiate that. We train the mind, not because that's who you are, but it conveys what you are, who you are. It's going to pass through the mind into this world. So by transforming it, we then become better and better servants of the one, transparent to the one. Simply walking peace, love, compassion in our everyday lives. It's Thich Nhat Hanh talking about peace is every step. We walk peace into the world for the benefit of all beings. All beings are our own self. That's what we come home to. So that I'd share this is a piece from Oh My Beloved, Whisperings from the Divine heard by Kalidas. And that's a picture of, it's in gold and black, but that's a picture of Tara. It's a green Tara. Now, we have a red Tara and a black Tara, but this is a depiction of green Tara. And other times we've gone into Tara teachings, and there's videos up on YouTube about that if you'd like to explore that from our channel. So this is called Come Home Now. Come home now. Oh dear mind, you struggle in your world of self-created differences, trying to unite that which was never divided. Oh dear mind, for you, loving all and knowing all are true mysteries, lost in the impenetrable darkness of unknowing. Oh mind, your unknowing is a consequence of your very nature. Oh dear mind, you exist to know differences and limitations, the finite world of your existence. Oh dear mind, you skillfully divide the infinite into tiny pieces and suffer the loss of your boundless, all-encompassing source. Oh dear mind, this is what is symbolized by your ouster from Eden, when you became aware of polarities, the pairs of opposites, good and evil being just one, that appear to separate you from your divine source, the infinite, from which you can never truly be separated. Oh dear mind, you were created to explore, know, and identify with the components of your perceptions. The 5 empty skandhas Buddha viewed while coursing through deep prajna paramita. Oh dear mind, your way of knowing is rooted in the illusion of separateness and independence. Your way of knowing is the source of your suffering. Oh dear mind, see through the eye of the infinite one. Knowing and loving, bound to the appearance of separateness by your language, are one for the divine. Knowing and loving, bound to the appearance of separateness by your language, are one for the divine. Knowing and loving are one. They're not separate. The infinite knows all in love. Oh dear mind, knowing all is loving all is knowing all, loving all is knowing all are one. All one, all one, all one, there is no other. God, the one known by many names, sees only one. Oh dear mind, the mystics of every tradition come to know the same truth. There is only one. Tatwam asi, aham brahmasmi, shivoham, ein od milvado. St. John of the Cross said, when God looks at the world, all he sees is himself. Oh dear mind, the only way to know this is to dissolve into the one. Relinquish for a moment longer, if you can, this illusion of separation that you cling to. But don't worry, you will return to your job of seeing differences, but your vision will be forever transformed, informed by deep knowing. You are the divine's own creation for knowing separation and difference. Even in the depths of ignorance, even in the depths of suffering, you are the divine, forever known and loved, forever living in the divine embrace. Come home now to knowing, loving all, including yourself, just as the one created you. Come home now and know true freedom from suffering. come home now to know true freedom from suffering. It's only through true knowing the infinitude of our being, knowing our unity, our unbroken unity, our unbreakable unity. It's only an illusion of separation that we dwell in that creates the suffering. Come home to true knowing. Come home to radical freedom. Come home to knowing you are profoundly loved at all times, in all places. You are in the divine embrace. Jai Ma. That's the truth. That's the truth. We come to know. We come to inhabit. We were born to know that. We were born to live in that state and pass it on, to remind others there's another way. We don't have to be engaged in all this violence and suffering that is all born of the same ignorance, the profound ignorance of not knowing the fullness of our being and not seeing the divine as everybody and everything. Come home to that. Then we will have the peace, the love, the compassion manifest on this earth through ourselves, through our institutions, through our governments. So we endeavor to make that so. Right now we're going to chant the mantra Om Namah Shivaya, a throb of the infinite, throb of that awareness. Chant it for a few minutes with that awareness. I am that. I am the auspicious. I am that consciousness. I am that luminous one. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. I bow to the auspicious one. The ego mind bowing to its source, the truth of who it is. And then saying, I surrender. Let me become immersed in that, dissolve in that. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. And then we'll sit in the stillness and just observe. Just observe. What are you observing? Oh, the luminous quality of awareness, illuminating all the content, but shift away from content of mind, thoughts, feelings, sensations, an ache in your knee or whatever it might be, a sound outside. Shift away from it. It's all content. Go to source, the luminous one, illuminating every moment. Every moment. Every moment of your existence. That luminous one is there. Right there to turn to. What's illuminating my presence, my experience, everything here and now? Oh, let me know the boundless nature of that one. That's what we're capable of. That's where the practices take us. So we'll chant and then sit in that sublime presence with greater awareness. Om Namah Shivaya. 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 And we end with this prayer. May all our practices truly benefit everyone, and may all beings know complete freedom from suffering. Namaste. Becoming empty. Empty of the false self, empty of identification with the mind. The mind will be purified, changed, transformed, become the better servant. But it's not who we are. We're not limited to that. And that's why in the Shiva Sutras it says, Lokananda Samadhi Sukham. The bliss of the world is the bliss of Samadhi. Talking about Sahaja Samadhi, the living Samadhi. The Samadhi that's the same, eyes open, eyes closed, illuminates all things at all times, in all places. That's the state of living meditation. That's the state of living wisdom, compassion, the boundless nature of love, rapture, compassion, peace, embraces all as itself. That's what we come to know. That's what we can then live into the world. And as the mind and body are purified of old patterns, conditioned patterns of reactivity, they become clear to just serve that, to serve the one that has become the many, to see the one as the many. This is what we were born to know, to live into this world. That highest state of knowing that we're all innately capable of. Always present, just the other side of identification with the mind. So it's illuminating your experience right here, right now. Illuminating how your body feels, what's running through your mind. Illuminating the experience of whatever environment you're in. That luminous one, that's you. That's you. All this is, it's content. It's creation. The Creator looking at its creation with love and delight, with the embrace of boundless wisdom, compassion, love, peace. That's what we come to know, inhabit, abide in, and live into the world. So thank you for being ones doing the sadhana, doing the practices that empower you to do that, to walk that into your everyday lives, and in whatever ways you carry that. Whether it's momentary or for longer periods, that's what we carry. So thank you for being ones doing that, transforming the world, breath by breath, thought by thought. Bring that love, your true nature into this world. And so I want to thank you for coming this evening, bringing the fullness of your being and the power of your practice. Thank you for sharing what we offer with so many people. You know, we're trying to offer it freely through the YouTube channel, through our e-newsletter. So sharing that as well as you do that helps us do our selfless service to the world. So thank you for participating in that seva and supporting that by the many ways that you do that, including donations that you make. So thank you for those. They and allow us to continue to do this and make these offerings as freely available as possible. So once again, with all my heart, with all my love, thank you for coming this evening. Jai Ma.